Our first question is going to be for all of the candidates. What grade would you give the city's homeless response over the past couple of years? And without pointing fingers at Multnomah County, what specifically would you do differently as mayor? We're going to go alphabetically on this first one, which means Mr. Gonzalez, please start.
I'd give us a C. You know, we've done a good job on bringing on task sites and safe rest villages. These have been significant interventions in a positive way for the crisis on our streets. It's actually leading to people getting into housing at rates that wasn't true with congregate shelter. That's been pretty darn good, in particular over the last 2 years. Where we've not been great is on enforcement. Again, some of our hands are tied by previously Ninth Circuit law, by Oregon law, but we need to be much firmer on enforcement when it comes to our right-of-ways, our sidewalks, and our parks. The pendulum is swinging there. I think we're getting more and more committed to that as a community, but we need to double down on that. So I think we can do a much better job there. Separately, you know, we're not doing a good enough job of producing housing in our region, particularly middle housing, and that is having a longer-term negative impact on our ability to house everyone in our community. So overall, kind of middle of the road, some substantial strengths and weaknesses.
Thank you. Mr. Mapps.
C+. We've done incredibly innovative work around our safe rest villages, which are moving people from our sidewalks into safe spaces. What we're finding is as they move there, after about 90 days or so, people are stabilizing. We need to have a partner over at the county so that folks can move on to supportive housing. One of the things you'll see me do as mayor is to negotiate a contract with the county, which states that all of our clients in our safe rest villages who complete the program will receive housing vouchers so that they can move into more stable housing. As mayor, one of the things you'll also see me do is to enforce our camping ban. I want to be clear with everybody: being homeless is not a crime. However, being houseless also doesn't give you the right to ignore the law. So we're going to emphasize basically normal order back in the city again. I believe that if we follow these steps, and I can house 1,000 people in the first year as being mayor, and in 3.5 years we can end street camping in Portland.
Thank you, Mr. Mapps. Ms. Osthus.
Thank you. I would give us a D, and it's not for lack of trying. I see so many people offering amazing services to our unhoused, but clearly we're failing many people. There's so much suffering, so much death and addiction. I believe that with better coordination, that many of our nonprofits that are working so hard could be more efficacious. I would like to see services coordinated from the state down, which would kind of make this county versus city issue not so much of an issue. So coordination from the top down, making sure that these services serve together to meet everybody at every point of their journey, so that when somebody enters the system, whether it's deflection or a hospital, that they have somebody to guide them through, ultimately to supported housing and to becoming productive members of our society.
Thank you. Ms. Rubio.
Yes, I would give us an incomplete, actually, because I think our work here isn't done, but solidly on the way to a C. And the reason is, when I first started in my term, one of the first things that we did was pass a policy that made it very much easier to build out shelters with services on site. And so I led a delegation that went down to LA and visited these sites, and by far these were the ones that had the best outcomes. So I'm pleased to see that the wheels are turning. We're having more success with these sites, but we're not done building the system. We're doing our side of the street, but we really need our partners at the county to also hold their corner of the system as well, so that we can have continued success throughout multiple jurisdictions.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you. The grade would be an F. So last year we grew unsheltered homelessness 887 souls. So for what my opponents are going to tout as a success, it continues to grow at a pace where now Portland has the highest unsheltered homeless rate in the nation, except for a few other cities. Letting people suffer and die on our streets is unacceptable. And then we have this course of action where we're going to apply tough love without love. That's just cruelty. I believe that every person in Portland deserves a bed every night, not near a school, not near a business, not in a doorway or a tent. And we have to address this as an urgent humanitarian crisis. And if we do that and we address this critical first priority, then we can address all the other associated issues like behavioral health, addiction, and our economic crisis. And then we can begin to repair, restore, and revitalize our city. So I'll end with an F, complete failure.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
All right, we're going to continue with homelessness as this is one of the issues that's top on most voters' minds here. This is a raise your hand for you all. Raise your hand if you believe the threat of jail time or time in jail is necessary as one strategy to compel some unsheltered people to accept shelter and seek services. Necessary as one strategy. That's everybody except Ms. Osthus. Ms. Osthus, why not?
I don't see the carceral system as serving any benefit to a person who's already vulnerable. I would like to see there be abundant housing and abundant services, well staffed to support those people. Maybe alternative shelter for people who really don't want the shelters we offer. Beyond safe rest villages, maybe like Right to Dream 2 type of model, but we have a lack of criminal defense attorneys. That whole system is suffering. Jail is not a place for anybody suffering from addiction or poverty.
Thank
period.
you. Another raise your hand here for all candidates
David,
here.
may I
Mr. Wilson,
please?
just briefly, go ahead.
Just to apply the 30 seconds. So yes, jail time, we have to enforce our codes without a doubt. There has to be that threat. We don't necessarily want to arrest someone, but we also are missing that very important link. We have to provide shelter first. So just going to rest, just using tough love without providing shelter is missing one of those very important resources to allow our city to function properly. We've done it in the past. We need to do it again. Provide shelter first. And then if arrest comes to it, then so be it. But we can't let or leave people on the street.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I
Wilson.
use my
Another raise
30
your hand.
seconds?
Of course, Mr. Gonzalez, go ahead.
With all due respect, I appreciate Keith's focus on congregate shelter, but his plan is going to make it worse. It's going to lead to people dying in congregate shelter. The acuity we see on our streets with untreated mental illness and addiction will lead to people dying if we don't have closely monitored medical intervention in our shelter system. He's trying to sell a cheap model. It's also going to breed chaos and crime to neighborhoods. We have invested a lot in our shelter's security in the areas around it. It's an essential component to intervention here. So trying to sell us something on the cheap and then bad-mouthing the people who want to enforce the law is not good enough, Keith.
Mr. Wilson, I'm going to ask you to hold on that. I'm going to ask that very question to you in a minute. Ms. Rubio, did you want to use your 30 seconds here?
I will hold on to my 30
Okay, let's do that. A quick raise your hand. Raise your hand if you believe the city or county should hand out or provide funding to groups that hand out tents or tarps. Anyone? Ms. Rubio, why?
I believe that right now in today's world where we're facing elements, I think it's cruel to not allow certain life-saving equipment or gear when needed, for example, before an ice storm or a winter storm. So in certain situations, it is appropriate because we have to think of the person and the lives at stake.
Thank you. One more raise your hand here. Raise your hand if you believe the City of Portland should continue to fund the Multnomah County Joint Office of Homeless Services. Should continue to fund. It's everybody except Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Mapps. Mr. Mapps, why not?
This is something I've been clear on during my entire time on council. The city of Portland needs to be focused on reducing the absolute number of people on the streets. I'll tell you, the county is fundamentally interested in trying to solve for a different problem, which is to avoid people falling into homelessness. That's an important problem, but it's not the problem that the city is trying to solve. Also, the city hands over tens of millions of dollars to the county every year, but we have no benchmarks for what those dollars are going to be spent on. I think this is unacceptable. In order to solve this problem, the city and the county have to work together, but we have to have a clear understanding of what the city does and what the county does. And I will tell you, the agreements that we've worked out with the county over the last several years don't do any of that. And frankly, that is one of the reasons why we see so many tents on our streets.
Thank you, Mr. Mapps. Questions on homelessness for each of you individuals here. Mr. Wilson, this is for you. You've set a goal of ending unsheltered homelessness by the end of June. Ms. Rubio referred to it as magical thinking. Mr. Gonzalez said the Wilson plan would, quote, bring chaos and crime to a church near you. He likely said something to the same effect just now. How do you respond to the criticism, and whether or not you meet that goal, what is your plan for the following 3.5 years?
So essentially you're saying it's ambitious. And so it's not ambitious to leave our neighbors on the street. We're wasting hundreds of millions of dollars right now. and we're getting nothing, no results, there's no accountability. It's not ambitious to want to care for our community. And about 6 years ago and previous, we always relied on nighttime emergency shelters, and we closed them all. Shane, you wrote an article just this last week, pardon me, your colleague Lillian wrote an article that Boston only has nighttime shelters. We have none here in Portland. Philadelphia only uses nighttime shelters. We have none. We elected to close them. All I'm doing is using a basic model that's used in most cities in the United States with far lower unsheltered rates than we have. That's not extraordinary. That's not far-reaching. That's just caring for our community. Again, we're not going to let our neighbors live and die on the streets I'm not going to let people live on and die on the streets as your mayor.
And Mr. Wilson, just the second part of that question here briefly, 30 seconds max, please. Sure. What's your plan for the following 3.5 years beyond congregate shelters? Where do you go from there?
So we will provide the needs of those individuals as they come in. We know that when you provide shelter, we have many people, or 35% of the people in Portland are what's called homeless upon arrival. So when you have a community that allows or fosters that behavior of tents and RVs without managing your codes, you're drawing others from the housed and from other communities into our community. By enforcing our community safety laws like no camping and no RVs, you allow those individuals to make a decision. Come inside and we'll care for you. If not, then we'll help you get back home.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ms. Rubio, this is for you. Your campaign website says the following, quote, Carmen knows that Portland's best days are still ahead and that solutions are within reach. So walk us through a specific policy solution related to homelessness or housing that, if elected, you believe you could achieve during your first year or two as mayor.
Absolutely. One of the ones that we're working on right now, as soon as we're ready to move forward and as soon as I get elected, I'm going to implement a 90-day fast pass squarely aimed at housing, catalyzing more housing development. So the thing is here, and most people know that we have a notorious system for permitting, and this would actually specifically give people who are interested in developing housing, and I'm talking housing at all levels, but we're absolutely hoping this will incentivize affordable and middle income housing, that if you have all your financial material ready, your capital stack ready to go, and you are going to build housing, we will guarantee that you will get a pass or permit issued in 90 days. And so that, we're hoping, can tell everybody that we are open for business, and we particularly want to make sure that housing is on the list.
And Ms. Rubio, just briefly, why hasn't that been done over the last 4 years?
That's a great question, and I think that up until this time, we've been benefiting from, an organic, landscape where we had plenty of housing development occurring and things were in a better place. But post-pandemic, we're seeing the impacts of no development to low development. It's impacting our Bureau of Permitting. It's impacting the availability of housing for everyone along the continuum. So what we have to do right now as a city is what's within our scope to do and turn every lever that we have to catalyze that development.
Thank you.
Ms. Osthus, what's your approach when it comes to the idea of housing first? Should more housing and more affordable housing be the primary response to homelessness in Portland? And if so, what's your plan to achieve that?
Thank you. Yes, the number one indicator of houselessness is the cost of living. The higher the cost of living, the more a community has an unsheltered population. I live very close to the bone. I rent rooms to low-income people. I've had tenants move into their cars. We really need more no-income, low-income housing. And I see a downtown that is bombed out. It's vacant buildings with people sleeping in doorways. So somehow the city has got to reimagine our downtown and fill it with people, bring life back to it literally by offering housing, use whatever levers the city can to buy back distressed properties so that the city has more control over what rents to charge. And very soon, as people move in, as people families, artists, musicians can live and work downtown, we will have a thriving downtown that will activate all of our neighborhoods.
Mr. Mapps, last month, a fire that sparked at a homeless camp in southeast Portland to a neighboring apartment building, displacing 14 people. Neighbors and management said they had reported issues with the camp to the city multiple times and literally did not know where to turn. What do you say to those neighbors, and how will things be different if you're elected mayor?
Well, absolutely. This is a matter of the city being accountable. I think BDS and perhaps the fire department failed to fully inspect that building. I think this has been a long-standing issue. I'm the candidate in this race who is consistently focused in on getting the nuts and bolts of government to work correctly. So we'll get our inspectors out to look at properties, make sure they're safe when they're not safe. We will hold folks accountable. You'll notice that as the commissioner in charge of PBOT, I'm the guy who hired dozens of new folks to go out and patrol our city to look for cars that haven't been registered, and we're handing out tickets. That wasn't a politically popular thing to do, but it's one of the things that we need to do in order to have safe streets and to have working business districts. And I'll bring that same kind of accountability and that focus on the basics to the mayor's office when I have the privilege of serving in that space.
Mr. Mapps, thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, a few weeks ago, we reported on a homeless shelter in the works in North Portland. The county held what it called a grand opening for it in June, and as of late September, it had yet to open. The Joint Office of Homeless Services has said it was waiting on a permit following inspections. The city says the county has never scheduled said inspection. Viewer Cassandra Marshall in Northeast Portland also raised this question. How would things be different with you as mayor?
Well, getting up shelter as quickly as possible and getting through permit process for housing as well is an essential component to addressing both the front end and sort of the tail end of homelessness. Getting people off the streets into shelter 100% has to be a priority for the city of Portland. I like Commissioner Rubio's idea on the 90 days for residential building on the tail end of housing. Those are all essential components of it. So clearly, I've been the strongest voice for enforcement in the region when it comes to camping. I'd like to be the strictest mayor on the West Coast when it comes to outdoor camping and outdoor drug use. I think that's essential to send that message that we are no longer an enablement community in the city of Portland and Multnomah County. So I think that's a decisive shift in what we've attempted over the last 20 years with respect to homelessness.
Thank you.
All right, candidates, we're going to move on to public safety, addiction, and mental health. With that comes a viewer question for all of you. This is from Kim Norris in Northwest Portland. Take a look.
What role do you envision for Portland Street Response going forward?
All right, our thanks to Kim for that. Portland Street Response, the alternative to police that assists some people experiencing mental health and behavioral health crises citywide. Ms. Rubio, let's start with you. What is your vision?
My vision for Portland Street Response is for them to become part of this integrated, comprehensive first responder approach that we have from the city. We need the right responders in the right roles. And what that means is Portland Street Response, which is a very innovative approach, should be fully funded, and it should have stability, not just in financial stability, but also political stability, so that it can actually fulfill the ideal of the model, and we can see the outcomes and see how it impacts the rest of the systems. It hasn't ever been up to scale as intended, and we need to give it that chance so that we can actually see its impact and know how we can even enhance it further.
Just briefly, maybe 15 seconds, what does scale look like for you? Because right now they have 34 full-time staff with 3 more on the way. They operate 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. citywide. So what does that look like?
It would be 24 hours and across the whole city.
All right. Ms. Osthus, what's your vision for Portland Street Response?
I would like to see it expanded and fully funded, and to increase the utility of it. I understand that as it is now, there's a lot of things PSR cannot do. They can't transport, they can't go inside of a building, so the cops sometimes are loath to call them because they wouldn't necessarily be helpful in many scenarios. So I would love to work with the police force and PSR to find how can we increase the utility to really relieve some of the burden on our police force. And absolutely fully staffed. I have a neighbor who's been at PSR for 6 years, and he has compassion fatigue. He needs a sabbatical. He sees so much difficulty out there, and so as abundant staffing 24/7, and again, not a political football, so it's funded, so these people know they have a job the next year, and we can hire the very best people because they know that there's a job the next year, and to understand and support them in their work, because it is hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Mapps.
I'm a huge supporter of PSR. Indeed, I have been an architect for PSR. I used to be the commissioner in charge of 911 back when PSR was a pilot project in Lentz. And as the commissioner in charge of 911, one of my responsibilities was to work closely with that team to figure out how we grow that. We managed to grow it from a tiny pilot project in one single neighborhood to 95 different neighborhoods. Now, the next steps for this program, I believe, require developing greater coordination with the county. Too often our PSR folks show up and are only able to offer someone a bottle of water or a granola bar. My goal is when they go out to interact with our PSR clients, we're able to do a warm handoff to services which exist at the county. That kind of coordination, frankly, has been missing from the city, and frankly, there has not been a lot of hunger on the current councils to develop that kind of coordination and write it into the contracts we have with the county. But that is the vision I have for both PSR, and that is also the vision I have for our city.
Appreciate you all keeping to time here, allowing us to tackle as much as possible. Mr. Gonzalez, what's your vision?
Well, it's been a significant intervention to alleviate police responses, right? So the challenge with PSR is that they often are responding to the same person multiple times over a period of time. And invariably, you're going to end up requiring a more significant medical intervention and sometimes law enforcement intervention with the same client, the same person. So it's done a good job of alleviating the front end of it, but it's not necessarily leading to systemic change that I think a lot of folks hope for. I do think that it needs to be more tightly tied to the county. I think at some point we should discuss whether it's better run in the joint office or Multnomah County, in part because they have such strong behavioral health focus. And second, the possibility of transport is a good one. I think that is a possibility. We have to bargain through that to get that really solved, but that is a viable option. The other piece to talk about here is our CHAT program, which is often medical intervention for those on our streets. So we have been able to scale that quite effectively in overdose response and addiction withdrawal. Thank you.
And that's time. And CHAT is the community health assess and treat that's under Portland Fire. They're two-person teams. They respond to overdose calls. They also provide access to medication for opioid use disorder. Mr. Wilson, Portland Street Response, your vision for that program?
Very much a supporter of that, but we need to expand its mission. So Mayor Bud Clark and Don Clark, who was the executive director of Central City Concern 30 years ago, started a sobering center. They used Cheers to transport those individuals to the sobering center. We closed ours in 2019. In the middle of an epidemic, Portland Street Response should have an expanded mission to include transport to a sobering center that the mayor of Portland should have set up 5 years ago, but we still are without, and we keep blaming the county. Those are citizens. Those are Portlanders that we're leaving on the street. Portland Street Response is a perfect opportunity. We have some days with just two of the vehicles out. When we have 6 that are available, we need to supercharge this, fully fund it, and then utilize it to replace firefighter call-outs and police call-outs to care for our community members and to help those hundreds of individuals who are going to die every year because we don't have a sobering center way to address the addiction crisis on our street.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Just briefly, raise your hand. Does anyone not support allowing PSR to transport patients? Everybody does. Okay. Another raise your hand here. Raise your hand if you feel safe walking through downtown Portland, particularly at night, if you feel safe. Anyone? Ms. Rubio, Mr. Mapps, Mr. Gonzalez, you're there. Ms. Osthus, Mr. Wilson, you are not. Shane, go ahead.